Okay, so I just got back from the recruiter. I didn't get a no this time, at least. I still have to check to do my tattoos to make sure I'm in, but, if they're letting in hand tattoos and people out to 38, hey, we're doing all right in my boat. I've only been there, going there for 13 years. Never give up. So I think that's pretty cool. Hopefully hear more back from them tomorrow. And hey, that Canadian or that Russian Canadian trucker, yeah, just break it in. The best thing that'll come about this is that you'll get some things and silver lining, high quality problems and things like that, or something you have to deal with the you know. So I want to have that
Good
note
evening and
inside
welcome
here.
to Tucker Carlson tonight. Since the day that Donald Trump became
I watch them
president,
all.
Democrats
You
in
got to keep an eye on
Washington
all this,
told
but
you have a patriotic
I just want to have this
hate
talking
crime
something in the
here.
background here.
It's not a suggestion
That's
to
right.
ban anything less than hatred.
People are players. You have to do everything generalized and can't be too Boy Scout camp about stuff. It's dirt. Chains and rails are chains and rails. Figure out a budget and make sure you're staying within your budget. I know I've been studying a lot of the ASVAB, going through that stuff, hammering that stuff real hard. Did I bring those in? Yeah.
Before that happens, it might be
I brought my books, but they never ask. Sometimes you get lucky and show them a page and they start to get curious.
Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get
But there's a lot of material. Again, you start cutting out, obviously, the stock books. Just in case you're new here at the party. New here at the party. This is my boot barn. Get you fundamentally registered into some stock market numbers. How to begin a process of choosing one so you can begin to understand the wave function, or at least the probability points, the high and low interferences, or relative functions of where you might be with those situations. So I give you different fundamental design sets inside here, which don't take you actually long. I mean, I cranked this out in a few days. A lot of it's just grid work, figuring out names, filling in the gaps, filling in the entropy. Obviously, get more into it. Mathematics in a whole. In a whole. People don't always, deal with the spin mass direction being a probability, being a vector position. My spin mass direction is how many times I've been there, how well you do on the ASVAB in terms of where you're probably going to do well with the least amount of friction around the pipes in Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp Lejeune, right? But that would be the field, right? And you want to be able to field theory like a dragon and be able to run like light. That's the congruency inside of there, because if you're running like a bunny and somebody's trying to chase you, that rabbit becomes the dragon, depending on how you've been taught. Axioms, quantrinos, this is some fun stuff and some really heavy duty stuff. Twister theory is any theory. Teaching, yeah, they say if you want to be good at something, try to teach it, whatever medium you're at. Here's a presentation of Perkins multi-domain battlefield. Obviously stock numbers would be really heavily swayed by photoelectric effects. It doesn't need to be a machine if it applies in the function. So go ahead, Tucker. Mod periods, common values of diagrams, the photon, the negative electron, and the positive one. Give you that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And a few other things that go along with this system. But these two right here. You'll find some of the same material in here as you'll find in here. But realistically, I'm taking this off, and I might even do a bit more into it tonight while I'm just working some of the fundamentals I should know. IH, make sure you get the names right. Make sure you know the senior enlisted advisor of the Army, command sergeant, sergeant major, first sergeant, master sergeant, sergeant first class, staff sergeant, sergeant specialist, corporal, private first class, private, PV2. Obviously, and your warrant officers, be able to tell what they do. Now, as far as what their main goal is yet, I could pop open Tread Docs in here and begin to analyze what that is, but it's not always practical from that, because you hit this huge matrix of options, tasks, and whether that's really your MOS in the Q25, the electron position here, in the perturbation theory of the wave function of its motion and position, something like that. Again, also that goes to pay structures and getting good with graphs. It's just good. People, they fall into it. It's like, you can do graphs. Yeah, I don't mind lining stuff out and filling in numbers. You seen the stock numbers I do? I mean, eventually you can do it there. You're going to be programming here, or eventually getting that to program over here on a line of code. Still running, Tucker?
Oh, darn it. Listen, guys, you may be Europeans who live in Europe, but you don't fully
The O5s,
understand
or the O's.
ramifications of war in Europe. That's your problem. The thing
Inside
about
here,
Europe, you've had
Army deductions, BAH and BAR. This is something, or BAH and BAS. This is something I talk about a lot in the mill. It's a marriage between you, the equipment, the trucker. You meet once a month for doing something. Base allowance and housing can be affected ever so slightly sometimes by those standards, by your performance reviews, incident reports. So you gotta understand that that's a relationship. Base allowances for subsidies. The rate of base and rate based in feeding a single service member. So again, that, you're thinking about what I do, and then making that housing allowance or giving an additional nature to that because of the inflation of how many kids you have, what promotions you might need to actually have to get to maintain the bracket that you're supposed to get into, and things like that. And this is real common hat stuff in the mills and things like that you get used to. It gets watered down a lot in there because you wind up sharing that responsibility as a thing, and somebody can bring something up and then Sarge bang, get you dead. Soldier Creed inside of there. Very good. I'm going to spare it out here for right now. General orders. I will guard everything within my limits of my post and quit my post only when properly relieved. Now again, out here in the civilian world, I'm not going to lie to you, that's it's a subject of interest, we'll call it. I will only obey my special orders and only perform all of my duties in a military manner. When you're in the mill, you say, well, this is how it works. I'm expected to do a pay thing. The difference of being home and knowing the clock time of your truck you're supposed to fix, or the clock time of it's a truck, you're supposed to do the same part, the company has that same truck, the two timelines can be vastly different. Now, it still applies, and you probably should shoot to that number, but there shouldn't be the same level of distractions in these kind of topological models, and they're usually easy as anomalies in the system. Loyalty, duty, respect, self-service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. The things that you learn in the Hermetic Way, the Master Key, Lesser Key. There's a few good books out there for it. Code of Conduct, of course. I am an American fighting in the forces that which guard my country and are my way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. Now that's a real thing. It's dirt. It's dirt, but it's here because the rules that are here should apply at least generally across the board to a lot of situations. And there's situations here, if I seen them doing over there, wouldn't matter if I was wearing a badge, wouldn't matter if I had tags on. Hopefully when the cops get there, it's just a handoff at that time, or in terms of that situation. And Code of Conduct, of course, again. I got the, basically their stub. Not necessarily, I thought it was just fun. Let you know, look at it, in case you needed to form out the books for timelines, costs, what's the mass, right? If the invert pilots theory on this, where the job details with the max average timelines to those functions, well then, you're going to want to put those in here. We'll get back into what we talked about here in a minute, but again, it's because you don't get a chance to really get in here and determine the process. I mean, I want to recruit somebody as a stonemason because it's come up before. Hey, come on in the mill. It's one of those things, but you got to walk this very fine walk about, well, I don't really have that kind of information. I'm not allowed to say any of those things. I don't even want to, because of disclosure waivers and things like that, promise you numbers that I can't guarantee to be true, especially without a first evaluation of which way down the rabbit hole this thing's going to scutter off in the stone mill, and put me right in the corner, or you are going to be just bang right into the corner. But that is your first move anyways. Go to your corner. That's your M1. That's your main your main purpose, your main function. If you get the details and orientation of what you're supposed to do in this site, it's not that thing is start doing stone in another place or carpentry or anything else. It's how did you do that original task? That is your corner. And figure out how to lay out organizations and theories. These are my mill walkthroughs. I had to go do mill inspections, check the saws, check the stone, check rock on the bay, ready to go into the stones, make sure that the big saws and other things are those in proper orientation, take care of the skid steers, and do all those other values in there. Usually it's a lot they dump on you and not used to having any teammates help. So that gives you your general angling angles, what's the ground guide details, and it's basically a universal speed limit thing. I know for sure the Army's in there. You do 10 push-ups, they'll make you do 15. You do 20, they'll make you do 30. And that's that slope you're on inside of there, because you're constantly always trying to improve yourself, not just be on the learning curve of what the task is, but then the organization and field theory of those tasks, because that's how you work it as a force multiplier to really wreck that plate. Right? Because then you're getting reasons for a raise. It's hard to keep you in a platform in there because you're going to be maxing out on the upper end of timelines that hopefully were grammaticed out that you can actually see against two different standards, go in the office and ask about, has questions too. Now again, these are things that I didn't learn, so it's a bit of a dangerous situation if you're not careful. It can cause problems. Believe me, I know. You have to be sensible about the information as a whole, because rise over run, right? If you're not up to that and then the numbers come up to it because you thought you were, that's one thing. It happens from time to time in reality, but more often than not, you're going to see a difference between where you were, what you are, equally with like what the response in the crowd is. You're catching less stuff, less heat, and that means that you're doing more work. And I don't mean that to say just a physically more work. It means inside of there less friction. You're turning all those friction points into a functional program of on the ground how that operation works. Loading bays are a lot of the same thing, but vastly different comparatively raw just anything you do in your life, or loading a saw. There's a M1, M2 gravity to it. G equals, in this case, an irrational number. Generally speaking, on a right-hand rule, you would say leadership, you would say functions under that model, you could say durability. If durability is you get hit twice, M1 and M2, and then 50% of that time, well, it's still an answer. It's in superposition, but it's not as consistent or concise, at least A plus B, two guesses in algebra. If I only had two tests in ASVAB or a couple of situations to meet a guy, if it rung really well both times, there's a good chance that will continue in that orbital of that model. Lots of grammatics. These are weekly, or daily, bi-weekly, or daily, bi-daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, and it depends on whether you actually need a bi-monthly or if you consistently work the bi, or the bi-weekly on the second one like it's a monthly, or any operation. I know I'm getting tongue-tied on that one, but there's a real difference if it's on the board and a manager's supposed to do those variances on this technique and we're just supposed to touch on a subject for a short period of time, where I would run off my own system of it, which might have been the weekly, month, or the bi-weeklies and weeklies, And the monthly programs or the bi-monthly programs would have somebody on those details. Photoelectric effect, again, you know, this kind of gives you an idea. This is what you're standing on. This is the programming point after you get into how the floor arrangements work, because you're going to be doing a lot more than just standing here touching buttons. There's a lot of in the operation, doing things, figuring out all those techniques, fixing rock cuts and things like that. Before we get into the blockchain, working on it. Blockchain inside here, I've done a few that deal with the program into the system that then you can use as a truth table inside of those systems against what your nightly reviews are, saving those things, and then back to those graphics. Got a couple more seconds. I'm going to rip through this material here. I like LandNav and Tread Docs, again, other things. And before I go, Space Marine, again, we're changing out some of these character cards. You know, this being a Warhammer character card, let's integrate that to an NCO. Let's integrate why, if you're the only kid in the room, even if you're not an NCO, you got to be able to maintain that Inquisitor or whatever it is. They're just terms that you add to your system, like a packet, or how you would work in a packet or a group as a wave function. In other systems, in certain fields where you can generalize that system in special relativity. So that's my note. Catch you in the next one. Woosah!